Good afternoon, Marc. It's really nice to be able to speak with you today and reflect a little bit on our collaboration during Amsterdam Fintech Week. I think it's really great that we've been able to get together and work together in partnership to facilitate such a great week of knowledge exchange and new connections to be made. But I think what I'd definitely like to explore today is can we get to know Ibanity and Isabel Group a little bit better and understand sort of what kind of role you play and what kind of role you want to take in the fintech ecosystem.
Well, thanks, Don. I'm really glad to be there as well. Maybe let's start a little bit about Isabel Group itself. Mm-hmm. Isabel Group is probably what you could qualify as one of the first Belgian fintechs. It was founded 25 years ago by the four major banks. And it's been focusing on providing multi-banking capabilities to corporates since then. And in 2017, they did acquire Ibanity, my company, and Ibanity was focused on banking API aggregation. So what we do is what a lot of other players do on the market today in Europe, which is providing easy access to PSD2 and open banking capabilities in Europe.
Okay, so this probably has taken off quite a lot over the past years when PSD2 became much more mainstream. Do you see a lot of demand for those solutions?
We did started without PSD2 in itself, so we were connecting through reverse engineering. We were trying to find out how the mobile APIs of the banks were working and then connecting to those ones. And then we did have to switch to the PSD2 APIs. It was a slow uptake, to be honest, and we saw a lot of issues with the APIs themselves, not just in Belgium, but also in the Netherlands and other countries that we operate in. But what we see is that for the past 2 years, there's been a pretty steady increase in the demand and the traffic, and we're also, I would say, providing decent quality in terms of API connectivity. At least in that part of Europe, where we cover 9 countries, and so we see indeed that the demand is not exploding but increasing more and more. So we see not just banks, but now a lot of fintechs, a lot of other types of companies willing to consume those APIs.
And where do you think that the biggest bottlenecks are? So which side is slowest? Is it the customer uptake, or do you see that it's also the connectivity on the banking side, for example?
I think it depends mainly on the use case. In terms when you look at B2C, for instance, B2C use cases, clearly the SCA is going to be the biggest issue. In B2B as well, because sometimes you have very exotic authentication means at the bank that needs to be also supported on the B2B channel. But for us, what we saw is that we recently actually published our bulk payment capabilities in our APIs. And then we saw a lot of dormant partners and customers waking up and said, "Oh, you finally have bulk payment. That's great. So we're going to start integrating." So that's also a nice surprise for us. And it shows also that for B2B use cases, we were still missing, I would say, that extra piece that was still awaited. It's not the only one, and we still have issues in some countries with SCA. But I would say that those are really the main issues. So for B2B, I would say the type of payments you can actually execute through the API and the SCA issues, and for B2C, mostly the SCA issues. And overall, and that's a problem that everybody has. Maybe sometimes the quality of the data that is a bit disappointing.
Yeah. No, indeed, what you're saying, SCA, strong customer authentication, is definitely a tough topic, right? So in some cases, you actually see that the user experience is actually going backwards rather than forward. So there's quite a challenge to deal with. Do you see that that's also going to require regulatory change to actually make that better?
Well, I don't know. I think the most important thing is to make sure that all the available means today actually work. That's I would say the minimum that most TPPs expect. And I'm not saying that banks are not making efforts in that front. Let's be honest. We're in very good contacts with a lot of banks trying to do their best in fixing their issues. We need to understand also that we're kind of putting a new interesting layer on top of sometimes very old infrastructure, and that sometimes the way things work through an API does not necessarily match the way those old systems work. So I think that to some extent, we expect some level of failure for every bank, especially when you go into edge cases like complex corporates that have a complicated mandate structure. I mean, you can expect that this was not tested properly by the bank, because sometimes they don't even know that these very complicated cases exist. But the more PSD2 becomes popular, the more those use cases start to pop up, and they start to jump at everybody's face, and then we have to fix them. But that is mostly, I would say, in that case with complex mandate structure, that's something that we see mostly on B2B and corporate use cases.
Yeah, no, I can imagine that definitely is a bit more complicated. And so how do you see yourself connected in the rest of the playing field, right? So I think you already mentioned that you collaborate with banks. What kind of other players are you mostly interacting with in the whole fintech arena?
Well, pretty much any company that needs access to banking data to do anything, be it payment reconciliation, credit scoring, anything. It's something that we provide and that they can work with. We also have a lot of ERPs, invoicing software. We also have very small niche players, for instance, using our products. Like in Belgium, we have a partner that is a speech therapist ERP, which is kind of interesting. It's really trying to really fix this issue of reconciliating payments that are small amounts and quite frequent, which can take a lot of time for people providing such professional services. So the spectrum is very broad, to be honest. We have banks consuming our services and using them. We have fintechs, large and small. We have very small niche players. So it's really interesting to see the kind of use cases that they're trying to build at the moment. Yep. Although I would say most of the traffic we receive and most of the way it's used is for payment reconciliation and invoice reconciliation. That's the main, I would say, one of the main use case we see, at least on the B2B segment. On the B2C, on the other hand, I would say that's your typical PFM credit scoring. That's most of what you see on the consumer space is about those two use cases.
Okay, and so I think that's pretty clear. So what do you think? Where do you think things might be heading? Right. So I think if we, for example, look at Asia, where you see a much more integrated financial perspective, where even e-commerce and payments and basically your financial business are coming much more together. I'm really curious also about your view on that from a European perspective, right? So do you actually think that we're going in that direction as well? Is that what open finance is about, or any other thoughts?
Yes, it's interesting you talk about payment service provider data, because that's something that we are actually working on, because we do have a lot of merchant customers that want to reconciliate the payouts that they receive from those suppliers. So this is clearly one way it's going. Everything that is transactional will eventually end up in platforms, aggregation platforms. I think on the B2C space, something we're not exploring enough is how money actually is used and stored by different categories of population. If you look at teenagers, for instance, they may not have a bank account, but they have a PlayStation Store account or an Xbox account where you give them money and then it shows up on those platforms. So looking more at banking as not necessarily just as something that is linked to a bank, but more about how you handle, I would say, assets or at least money in different types of segments of the population is what I find the most interesting, to be honest. Okay. And how you can really expand the concept of finance towards companies that are not banks or not credit institution or financial institution.
So at some point you will also be able to aggregate Steam credits, for example.
Why not? Or even, I don't know, even your World of Warcraft account, just to know how many coins you have. I mean, we need to, I think that the interesting, especially on the B2C part, is the interesting part is about what creative ways we're going to be going, in which direction we're going to go in the future, and how this will be combined with other types of platform. I think that one day what we'll have is you'll see a car in the street, you'll take the picture, and the app will tell you if you can afford it or not. That's it. So integrating really the banking experience into the customer journey of everybody, wherever they are, or taking a picture of a fridge or just a picture of in a magazine, and they will tell you if you can afford it or not. Bringing banking back to the moment of the decision, not making it too far away from the decision itself.
No, exactly. And I think what's interesting there as well, I think what you're talking about is also pretty close to helping give consumers much more grip on their financial situation, right? I think is that also what's driving you forward? I think this is one of the topics that we had on the agenda during Amsterdam Fintech Week, right? So how is the life for consumers and for businesses, how is that changing? And, do they still get it? And how can we better support them? What's driving you mostly there?
To us, really, we're playing only a very small role in that whole evolution, obviously. But what we find really important is about simplifying how people see banking and making it very clear what the situation is to them, making it very clear what they can do, what they cannot afford to do, giving them options. So it's really about helping them decide instead of just showing the information and letting them deal with it. It's really more about making sure they make more better and more responsible decisions, both in B2C and B2B. The same applies for businesses as well. If you're really a busy entrepreneur, you don't necessarily have time to spend a full day into an Excel or a cash forecasting tool. I mean, that's not really how. I mean, the person that's coming to fix your roof is not going to have time to do that. It's a person that's going to be on the road all the time. So we need to rethink how we see banking for these people, and also these entrepreneurs and these companies that are also the backbone of the economy in Europe. And that's really what open banking is about to me. It's really about figuring out how we can help those that don't have time to go back to a complicated banking app, and it's really about making it simple for everyone and simplifying the customer journey.
No, exactly. Yeah, I think that the customer journey is really a key issue there, because I think one of the fun things I always find is that actually the friction in the customer experience is usually also man-made, right? It's not a natural happening or anything. It's actually it's just caused by rules, tools, and other
sometimes self-imposed, self-imposed by a bank or by a company, because it matches the processes they have internally. So it's really about rethinking all of these and making it simpler for everyone.
Yeah, I like that as well. I think that's a theme for the 21st century, right?
Yeah,
to actually,
I mean, open banking and aggregation is just a very small part of it, but it's an essential part of it, because if you don't have that, you cannot go into more simplification. You have to have that backbone at some point.
Yeah, no, I fully agree, and I think I think it's from that perspective a really wonderful time that there's so much data becoming available, and that the connectivity that we're actually able to provide that now and start getting closer to what the customers actually really want. And so what I'm curious about is also sort of, let's say, right? So we partnered up during Amsterdam Fintech Week to get you involved. How do you see your role in the ecosystem, and where do you see, for example, things that you would want to team up with other parties in the ecosystem, certain challenges perhaps, or opportunities that you want to step into? What's your concept behind why would you want to be so active and embrace the community as a whole?
Well, local communities have always been important to us. I mean, even years ago, our first steps were really with Fintech Belgium, obviously, and then with Holland Fintech. For us, local communities allow us to connect to potential customers, but also just to discuss with the other companies having the same issues that we have. Because sometimes you can, when you build a business, you can feel very alone in your corner, but just by knowing that other companies have the same issues, including with the APIs of the banks, you can start having a discussion and seeing how you can maybe put more pressure on a specific bank or whatever. So there's always this network effect that is really important, just first of all, by just sharing experiences. And it may sound counterintuitive that you can share experiences with competitors, but at some point when you are in a nascent industry like open finance or open banking is, you don't really have a choice. At some point you need to, I'm not going to say stick together, but you need to also understand the challenges of each other in order to have more impact on the industry as a whole. So that part is important, and it's the very difficult, I would say, border between cooperation and competition. But that's I would say what we seek also in collaborating with local communities. And then obviously there's the brand awareness that is being brought by those communities. You get a chance to explain how you do things, what you do. It's about thought leadership as well. It's really about having a chance to get exposed to a larger community of potential customers and partners. Now, when it comes to really partnerships themselves, what we look for are indeed partners that open up a certain customer segment or a certain industry. I talked about a small niche for speech therapists, which is an interesting one, but we also have partners more active in construction sector. And it's always very interesting to get feedback from them as well, because they serve sometimes customers we don't know that well. And it's interesting to also get an idea of how certain industries operate and how certain industries use open banking capabilities and what problems they actually solve with it, so that we can see if we can transpose that to other industries. And so really, we're always looking for partners that can help us grow not just our business, but also our understanding of what problems open banking solves for them today and what problems can be solved tomorrow. And it goes into every direction. The spectrum is quite broad.
That sounds great. And I think it's really wonderful that we've been able to contribute a little bit to that through both Amsterdam Fintech Week. And of course, we'll be to keep on supporting you also from a Holland Fintech perspective. Yes. I think it's good to wrap it up. Any thoughts that you would like to share about with our audience from the Isabel Group?
Well, I mean, I think we're only at the beginning of the journey. We're starting to see that things are moving, and it's quite encouraging. I think also that we still have a long way ahead. We need more collaboration between all the different players in the ecosystem. I'm not just talking about fintechs together, but also really banks and fintechs, because
small and large,
yes, banks somewhere along the line don't necessarily realize the potential that they can gain from collaborating with fintechs as well. It's growing. You can see that it's obviously growing in some parts of Europe and for some specific use cases. But I think that we have a lot to gain by working together much more than today. Yeah,
great call out, Marc, and I'm looking forward to keep on working with you in the ecosystem. Good luck with everything at Ibanity and Isabel Group, and look forward to talk to you again soon.
Likewise. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Have a great day.